Good evening. We're just about ready to get started. The SBREIA meeting for August 21 now is being called to order. And can everyone please stand for prayer by our good friend, Mr. Presley.
Father, we come to you in the precious name of Jesus, for we know that is the name that is above every name. We ask you, Father, to give us wisdom and give us understanding. Help us to be good stewards over the resources that you've placed in our hands, that you would be in a position to increase it for us, Lord, that we'll be able to distribute to those that don't have and be a blessing to those that don't have. We thank you for our guest today. We thank you for our guest speaker. We ask, Lord, that you anoint him and give him the words necessary for us to hear and understand and value the information that we're getting, that we'll be able to put it to work. We receive the food today, Lord, with thanksgiving that would bless us, that would nourish our bodies, that your word does nourish our spirit. We thank you for this gathering. You have declared wherever two or more gathered, you are in the midst. We welcome you by your spirit in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing, and we'll just face north for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. All right. The next item on the agenda is our Treasury report. Our Secretary Nancy is not with us tonight, so we'll go right down to the next item on the agenda, which is Treasurer Dolores Smith for the Treasury report.
Be careful. Right there.
Why don't you call it, Dave? Go.
Okay, for anybody that does not know, if anybody joins starting now, the rest of the year, we do a half a year, it's just $30. It was $60 this year, so if anybody joins tonight or any of the rest of the month or the next month, it's just $30. Anyway, I'm the treasurer, Dolores Smith. What happened to Nancy? We don't know.
Yeah, she texted. She's not able to make it tonight.
Okay, she just couldn't make it. Well, okay. Well, anyway, back there is Tammy. She handles all the treasure. She's our one paid worker, and she keeps up with our membership. She keeps up with who pays the dues, who pays everything. So she's the best thing we got going here. But anyway, because of the dues was way too high last year, the board decided if you paid the $120 last year, you didn't have to pay any this year. So consequently, we have not collected but $990 this year. But we had a lot of money in the bank. We did not need it, so it was not a big deal. We have $86.50.24 in the bank, and Tammy gives us an up-to-date. We have spent, right over here, we've really spent $36.89.27 this year, but a lot of that was from last year. It was the Christmas party, all the bills, and then we had other bills. So that's not really true of what we spent this year, but that's how much we have spent because we had to pay those bills. But anyway, we have spent that. We had the $990 in, and we've got the $88.50.24 is what we have in the bank. We have 2 CDs that we're getting some interest on that we got a few months ago. Any questions or anything? Anybody can look at them if you want to see them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for that fine report. All right. It appears that we got some first-time visitors or guests, and we'll just do a little round robin. Please stand and tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm the new one, right?
Miss you work the table.
I'm Jackie Gibson. I am a real estate agent here, and I also have about 7 doors of investment properties in town, and I just help people with Airbnbs, rental properties, investing, flipping, anything related to real estate I do, basically.
Well, thank you for visiting. We're glad to have you. And next.
Hello, I am Bree Watson. I am new to the whole investing realm, but I'm interested in getting into it. And I'm friends with Jackie, we're neighbors, and I'm also an insurance broker. So, yeah, that's me.
Nice. Thanks for coming out. Mr. Kale.
My name is Willie Kale. I'm a accountant. I work with Mr. Ben here as my boss, and you know, and I got into, you know, investment properties.
Good,
Good.
Glad to have you. Thanks for coming out. Young lady.
Oh, I'm okay.
Okay. All right, young man.
Hello everybody, my name's Grant, here with my wife Lauren. We're from San Diego. Originally I'm in the Air Force, so I was brought out here, but real estate investors as well. We have 8 doors now. We live in one of them. But we're just wanted to connect with the community more and make some friends and find more properties in the area.
And the first name again?
Grant.
Grant, glad to have you.
And I'm
Glad
Lauren.
to have you.
Yeah, we do the short term, long term, and we also do the medium term. So we dabble in all of them.
Yep.
All
Same.
right. Well, great. So glad to have everyone coming around the table. Young man.
All right. My name is Caleb McKenzie. I'm a real estate investor / wholesaler here. So I can help some of you guys, you know, reach your goals this year. That's my goal, to help as many investors as I can, you know, reach their goals. I have one rental property that I acquired through creative financing, and that's typically what I do. Either I'm wholesaling or I acquire properties through creative finance, whether through subject to or own finance or rent to own. So that's it. That's it about me.
All right, thank you, Caleb, for coming out and visit us.
All right,
Yes.
no problem.
Is there any more to you faces, visitors, maybe? You want to tell us a little about yourself?
I'm David LeMay. My wife Christina LeMay. We do Airbnbs and ranching and places like that. So
Okay. And that name again, please?
David LeMay.
All right, David, glad to have you. All righty. All right, this afternoon, we get down to our guest speaker. Our guest speaker tonight is Scott Hughes. And Scott is with the Northwest Louisiana Real Estate Association. He's also testified with the Louisiana State Legislature, also the Shreveport City Council, and MPC as well. We work together on several projects, and he's going to speak to us tonight on first-time buying, the process from buying all the way through to owning the property, as well as what the real estate market is doing in Shreveport-Bossier. So let's give Scott a big hand.
Thank y'all. Glad to come out and kind of stand over here so we can, you hopefully can see the screen a little bit. Always good to come out. I was scheduled to come, I think, in the summer, Ms. Dolores, and that week before I was supposed to come, the storm hit, and so we ended up canceling that meeting. So thank y'all for having me back out. I am Scott Hughes. I am the CEO of the local Realtor Association. I run the trade association and the multi-list for about 1,600 licensed realtors. I know some of you are licensed, some of you are not. I know you're a rental association, so I've been your annual guest for a while. So I'm going to try to give you an update today, as Tommy just said, on the market conditions, and then kind of house buying, house selling 101. Many of you know more than I do. I'm going to be up front. I don't have a license. I'm not an attorney. I'm the guy that runs a trade association, but I'll walk you through kind of some of the things we do in some of our training with some of the realtors and the basic steps for buying and selling. But I thought I would start with, Ms. Dolores asked me to start with a look at the data because it's been a crazy couple of years. I tend to look at data in 5-year periods, which is kind of interesting now because if we go back and look at 2019 through today, we're looking at the year before COVID, and then we're going to look at what happened during COVID, and then we're going to look at where we are today. And we have no basis for where we are today. We have not, we really have nothing like this in the history of our data to look at. So I kind of put some graphs. I'll try to highlight this and show it to you that we show our people. And so I don't know if you can see down here, the blue line is 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. So if we look at this, this is active listings. Active listings. And for the sake of discussion, I'm showing you the multi-list data. We know that's not all the sales. Some of you do things and they're not on there, but this is the official data for the market, so to say, and we'll kind of look at that. But the key is, whatever it is, it's the same year over year, and so we can kind of look at it in that regard. But if we start here in the blue line, and we look at where the actives were, in 2019, we were regularly between 2,000 and 2,500 active listings. If you went on the multi-list at any given day, you would have anywhere above 2,000 active listings. You can see before COVID hit, we were already starting to come down a little bit. We were in a good market. We look back and we forget, 17, 18, 19, the market was coming up. We were at the highest we've ever been at. I will give you the same analogy I tell my board of directors. If you think about Shreveport-Bossier real estate as a 20-story building, we were probably on the 17th or 18th floor. We were doing pretty well in 17, 18. We climbed way up in the building. We were all comfortable. Nobody was afraid. My membership was growing. Your portfolios were probably growing. And we still had 2,000 properties on the market. Then we get to the orange line. Anybody see something happening here?
Oh, yeah.
That's COVID. March the 13th, COVID hits, we shut down, and look what happens to the active listings. People didn't want to sell. You know that as well. And you just see the active listings start taking a dive. We're going to see why in a second on the next slide. But the active listings, homes available for sale, start plummeting below 1,500, down to almost 1,000 at the end of the year. Then we go to the gray line and we pick it up, and we kind of stabilized in 21. We hit kind of the bottom. People started feeling comfortable. The other thing that happened is interest rates bottomed out. Interest rates went down below 2%, below 3%. Refis as low as 2.5%, depending on what you were doing. And so you see, right here's the bottom. We kind of get to there, and then we kind of stabilized a little bit. We kind of finished up 21, and then we get to the yellow, and then we had the spring sales season again. Inventory goes down again, driven primarily by low interest rates. Everything's selling. And now we start seeing some stuff come back on the market. New construction, people want to sell, and we get back up to here. And the green line's where we are this year, and we are starting to finally see, we finally crept up over 1,000 active units last month. There's no inventory, okay? New listings. A new listing is anything that comes on the market in a 30-day period. Now sometimes something comes on, goes right off. Sometimes it sells, it goes pending. Ironically, I'm not going to go into this chart a whole lot, but what this chart will show you, if we look at it a little bit, just look at the general graphs. I would suggest to you, statistically, nothing changed in new listings. You go back and you see this and you say, Scott, inventory went to the pits. Maybe nobody wanted to really sell their house. No, except for a few periods right in here. That's the kind of the COVID dip there. Except for the COVID dip, the chart's the same. We were having roughly the same amount of inventory coming on the market every month. That was not the issue. Pendings, pending sales. We can kind of see, here we were in 19 on this blue line. You can kind of see where the spring sales season, then we get into the slower fall, then we jump to the orange line, and there's the COVID boom. There it is. All of a sudden, people wanted to live differently. They wanted to live out in the country. They wanted a pool. They wanted an office. They were looking to trade space. Pendings take off. Then in the fall, we always see a slowdown. Then we go to the gray line, and we hit, this is the all-time peak pendings in the market in the history of Shreveport-Bossier. 2021, we had almost 1,200 pending homes at the height of the spring season. Then the standard fall off during the spring. And then we saw last year's. Now notice last year we considered it, if you're just doing math, you look at this and you go, oh my God, sales were horrible. Sales fell off tremendously. But look where we were compared to the pre-COVID years. And so the analogy I use with my board, we were at that 17th, 18th floor. All we did here is walk up to the 19th, 20th, and the roof of the building. That's where we were right here. So now that sales are falling off, it's not like we're back down to the 10th floor. We still are back down to the 17th, 18th floor here. We're still pretty high in total volume. It's just we clearly are off. Look at this gap here. We're clearly off year over about a third of our sales. And then the green line is this year. It is starting out, it seems slower, but look at the green line. It's almost identical to the 2018, 2019 lines. So we've just returned back to pre-COVID levels, which were pretty good. Here's the closed transactions. Here's the problem. Remember we saw that inventory popping down? If you look at where the sales were, this blue line, we were doing, that's the sales season for 19, and then there's the 20, there's the slight COVID dip. We didn't know what was going to happen, and then look what happened. And then we had this actually was a kind of a storm there that caused that anomaly. But then we had the spring season, and then you saw it even top in 21, all-time record sales in 21. And then 20 was not bad for the sales, starting to slope off, and now you're seeing 20 sales are lower. We're seeing the total number of units. We are actually below the 19 levels. So we're back down just slightly. Days on market, I don't know if it matters to y'all a whole lot, it matters to my realtors a lot, but you can see on days on market, same thing. You start with the blue line. We used to be up, I don't know if you can see it here on this chart, but that is 80 days on market, this line right here. So we used to be at 80, coming down to 70, then we stayed in the 70 range and then it starts to die because we start selling the old inventory, and then anything that comes on the market sells within 30 days. That's really what started happening during COVID. So we see this sharp decline. We get down below 30 days. Things were selling in less than 4 weeks. Mostly cash offers, mostly offers coming in within 24 hours. We have now seen, as you see, it start to come back up a little bit. And here we are this year sitting at, really, to be honest, a rather nice 40, 45 days on market. You can move a property quickly, but it's not taking forever for something to transact. Okay, this is the good news. I told you the units are down a little bit. If we look at pre-COVID, we were sitting here, and this one doesn't have the actual, but we were about 189,000. That's kind of where we started. And you were seeing some price appreciation in the market in 19. Here's the COVID line. There's the dip, and then look what took off with price. And now look where we are. Even though the units are down, the green line, the average price is now topping 250,000. We're at the 240 to 250 range is the average price. So if you look at this chart, you realize back here we were selling maybe 5,000 units at 189,000 average price, and now we're selling, to be honest, 5,000 units again, but we're selling them at 250,000 average price. That's unbelievable price appreciation. So Shreveport-Bossier used to be a real value market with our housing cost. We just caught that up in COVID. And so, it's staying there. We thought this might come down, but this is staying there. Now, I'll just kind of give you a hint. What's keeping this high a little bit? One, we're seeing a lot of new construction. You know, it's a new construction, so obviously selling for more. And two, y'all are actually probably having some impact on this, because in a weird way, every property y'all buy is a property that comes off this chart. Because once a property gets bought for property management, it doesn't tend to get sold again and again and again. And so we're getting back to what's selling here. A lot of stuff, particularly Shreveport, is becoming a rental market. And so a lot of Shreveport is being taken out of inventory because it's being placed in the, I don't mean that negative, I think y'all understand what I'm saying here. When something comes off of the open sales market and goes into a property management portfolio, it tends to ultimately raise this number because a lot of what's coming out tends to be below that number. But this is a very good number in terms, particularly for my people, when we look at total gross sales on the market, it's over $1.2 billion. And then months of inventory, it's going to do what you expected, and it's now starting to come back up here to a decent inventory level. So that's the market statistics. That's kind of where we are. Market's not bad. We need interest rates to kind of come back down. We think they've capped out. They're around 7 right now. We actually believe, and our economists believe, that you will see interest rates start to, there's one more coming that we don't really know what they're going to do, and then after that they will start to go back down into next year. We think that's going to be the issue, and so we're not too concerned. Next year actually doesn't look too bad, we think, for retail sales. As far as some big updates from the National Association of Realtors, which doesn't impact anybody that's in real estate, these are the big 4 things we're looking at. DOJ's Department of Justice, there's a lot of stuff going on in the country right now that deals with law, that deals with commissions, that deals with selling of houses, and there's 4 big lawsuits. I don't know that that's going to impact the rental market a whole lot, but it will impact the sales market. So particularly pay attention to some of the DOJ litigation. I'm not going to get into it today because a lot of it really has a lot more to do with buyer-seller commissions, which I don't think is a huge issue to y'all, but it will have a domino effect of how real estate does work. Fair housing issues continue to be huge. They continue to be real. And so we would encourage everyone to pay attention. I tell my realtors all the time, there's really only 3 ways you can get in serious trouble doing real estate. And they're all federal, and you don't want to violate any of them. Fair housing, copyright, and antitrust. And so your meeting here, I don't think y'all are really in a fear of antitrust. You're all independent folks. But always be conscious that you're aware of antitrust, fair housing issues, and then copyright. And I mentioned copyright here. Continues to be an issue. make sure if you put something up or you're doing your own advertising that you have copyright. If you're putting photographs up, are they your photographs? You just can't go to the internet and copy somebody's photographs and throw it on an ad. Most of you are probably aware of that. That's a copyright issue. And then the one that we are being talked about a lot right now is, that's not OWL, that's AI. I should have put a little dot on it there. But be real concerned with AI. That nobody understands who owns the copyright to AI. So be very careful if you are getting into Chat GPT and these. I'm not the huge technology guy, I just run the MLS. But my lawyers and things tell me be very careful if you're using these Chat GPT and these AI things, because they ultimately are only as good as what they're pulling from, and ultimately you may or may not own copyright to something it produces. And so just make sure if you're doing that. A lot of people are getting into, write me a listing, lovely description for my Broadmoor 3-2, and then AI does it. You pay attention to that. Double check that. Don't just do it and paste. Make sure you're taking care of your AI in that regard. And then I've mentioned this to y'all before. We like to just mention it. If you are running a website in any way, be aware of these lawsuits where people go after you for website ADA compliance. So what that means is if you actually have a lawsuit where you're renting to people, people with disabilities need to be able to use your use your website. You may not get hit as much as my members will, but if I've got a Colwell or a Remax or a big company and someone goes to their website and they click on it and a blind person can't have it speak to them and it doesn't tell them, they will get sued. That's an ADA compliance. And so if you're running any kind of marketing or any kind of thing with your websites, you might just want to check into that. It's really not a big deal to have someone do that for you on your website, but just be aware. Most of y'all are probably small enough that you may avoid the big spammers, but the deal is they'll sue you for a lawsuit, and then in the end, you're just going to settle with them. You're going to say, look, we'll settle this for $1,000, and I mean, you're not going to fight it in the courts, and so they do these again and again and again. So watch out for those types of things on that, and that's the big ones. Louisiana LREC, for those who have a license, and sometimes you have a license, sometimes you don't, but for those who hold a real estate license, but the Louisiana Real Estate Commission, here's a few updates for you in that regard. Number one, license renewal. Who all here has a real estate license? If you have a license, you need to renew your license by September 30th. That's a change. We used to renew license by December 31st. Now we renew by September 30th. And so if you don't renew your license by September 30th, you're going to enter the 2 45-day late periods. And ultimately, if you don't renew with a late period by December 31st, you lose your license. They'll make you retake the test. And if you have a broker level license, you can't get it back for 2 years because of the rule that you have to have so many years as a salesperson before you get a broker. So if you have a license, please pay attention to that. You already know if you have a license that you had to take mandatory classes this year, and this year if you have the broker license, it has a broker mandatory, and then the 12 hours of continuing ed for those with a license. Local updates, I thought I would hit this, and first I want to say thank you to Tommy and your association. We did a little work last 2 years on something called the Shreveport Rental Registration. Have y'all talked about this here before, Tommy? Did y'all cover this at all here?
Go ahead and update us, please.
Okay. Every now and then you got to make a deal, and I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't think anybody liked this, okay? But we didn't like the alternative more. And what's going on is, as politics change, particularly in the city of Shreveport, they were proposing some very Byzantine rules on rental property. We had worked with the Airbnb, the short-term rentals, STRs. We had worked with them 2-3 years ago on short-term rentals, and we think we've got short-term in a decent place. And if you don't do business outside of this one area, you may think, oh, the local rules are onerous. Well, right now, Lafayette is fighting for their life to keep Airbnbs, if you know Lafayette. New Orleans has struggled a lot with the French Quarter around. We have them here. They're allowed. And so we've worked with the MPC before. What came up this time is they wanted to get not short-term rentals, they wanted all rentals to be registered. The problem that MPC is having, what they told us was they wanted to be able to, here's what they wanted to do, and tell me if I'm wrong, Tommy. They wanted to open the door, they wanted to come inside, they wanted to inspect, they wanted to check the water temperature, they wanted to give the tenants a way to complain. They wanted to say you couldn't evict a tenant if they filed a complaint. You know, they wanted to have an inspector that would come out on demand. They wanted all these things. And they actually had legislation that was at the council level. And we were able to get it stopped. We were able to get it sent back to MPC for some hearings. We were able to hold some hearings. I want to thank many of your members that came. We put together a nice coalition, the apartment complex people, us, you, a bunch of folks came, and we got that ordinance rewritten. So what did we fundamentally achieve? What we fundamentally achieved was we agreed to a registration process. So if you have rental property in Shreveport, you need to register it. You need to register it by December 31st. What does that mean? It means no fee. That's the first thing. There is no fee. This was not about government money. It wasn't about getting a fee. It's just a registration. What do they want when you register? They want a local street address, no P.O. boxes. They want a local phone number. They want a working email address. And they want a local agent. That doesn't mean an agent like a real estate agent. It means a local contact. It could be a property owner. It could be your attorney. What they told us and what we learned was that their problem wasn't really with what they said it was. Their problem's really property standards. They can't keep up with property standards. And we said, hey, what if we help you with that? What if we, we said, how can we do that? They said, the number one thing we need is a human being locally to contact. When the grass is not mowed, when there's a car there, when we have a complaint, we don't want to go to some P.O. box in California for a shell company through Delaware to get to an apartment complex where 90 people aren't being serviced with water. And I think y'all know what I'm talking about. And we agreed early on that we weren't going to defend slumlords, but we were going to stand up for property rights and for property managers. And so we made what we thought a deal. And if you understand what this really is asking for, and kind of our attorney came up with this, it's really like a Secretary of State registration. We're just giving them a registered local agent for the property. And so when something comes up now, Shreveport MPC, within a couple of days, can serve notice to the owner of the property, their attorney. It could be a local real estate agent, someone that they can get locally, and that process begins. We believe ultimately that's better for all property. And it's especially better for those that take care of their property, like most of our people do. In the end, I think we realized that, I don't know how many units y'all represent, but my members, we figure, represent about 35,000 rental units total between them. And so we have and then the apartment complexes are sitting there as well. And so of those 35 to 50,000 rental units, we really think this whole process is probably over about 200 or 300 of them. Most of those, thousands of those, are doing the right thing. So we kept off any onerous fees, we kept off any processes, and I would encourage you, please register. It's free registration, there's no penalty. Please do it. There'll be a penalty later on if you don't do it. And I think that we will get through that. Okay, with that, Ms. Loris wanted me to walk through what I call buying a house, selling a house 101. And this is basics. I mean, so remember, I don't do what y'all do. I don't know the skill level of everybody in the room. So I thought I'd take a pretty basic approach to this. And so, buying a house, 6 steps. The National Association of Realtors really breaks it down to 6 steps to buying a house. And we'll look at each of the steps. Number 1, get ready for home ownership. It may be a little bit different as investors, but I'm kind of going from our traditional approach. Number 2, of course, we're going to say find a real estate professional. That may be you in this case. It may be finding someone to work with you. Number 3, find the right property. Number 4, finance it, make an offer, and then closing and after the purchase. Let's kind of look at each of these a little bit. So what does it mean to get ready for home ownership? I think we break it down into kind of 4 big points. Number 1, build a good credit history. You're not going to be able to buy property if you have bad credit. I think most of us know that. We're not saying you have to have perfect credit. Nobody needs an 800, but you're going to have a way to finance this property, either through a loan or cash, figuring your credit out. Get mortgage pre-approval. Did you see those charts I showed you? Did you see that days on market? You're going to have no chance to buy a house if you don't have your financing pre-approved. And so, on behalf of my members, most of my members these days won't even show a property if someone's not pre-approved. Is that correct, my friend? They won't even go show somebody if they're not pre-approved. It's not worth their time, because by the time you find it, and by the time you try to go get your financing, the property's gone. You saw 30 days on market. So, get your pre-approval. We know what you can get loaned for. Or your financing, if it's different kind of financing, just have it set up. Save the down payment. Traditional house buying, you're generally going to be looking at a 10 to 20% down payment. You obviously can do less than that these days. There are ways you can do that. There are loan programs that can provide. There are first-time loan programs. But be aware and be conscious that you're probably going to have to put some money down. I know there's some ways not to do that, but in the general home buying process, You're going to have to put some money. And then this is the one that really tricks people up initially if you've never bought a house before, closing costs. When you get to the end, there's going to be a whole bunch of numbers on a closing sheet. So make sure you understand that. Make sure you understand that because sometimes you may have to bring that money to the table, particularly in terms of fees and appraisals and all the little things we'll talk about in a second that are going to show up. So get ready for home ownership. Understand it. Number 2, of course, I'm going to say find a real estate professional, but this could be you. Notice I didn't say realtor here, although that's what I do. But find a real estate professional, someone that can help you. We believe strongly whether it's a realtor or it's a licensed real estate person, they're worth their money usually because they understand this process. But if this is something you want to do, get referrals and references. I will tell you up front, do not go hire your brother's sister's best friend. You know, don't hire the person that you sit next to at church just because they need to get references. Find the people that match. You may have, I tell you what, I know them all. And I know some very good realtors. And when it came time to sell my mother's house, it didn't matter how good of friends I were. It mattered which one sold South Bossier property in this price range and understood working with an 84-year-old lady that's angry. Okay? That's the realtor I needed. Okay? So whatever your deal is, you know, you find the right one for you. You find the right person to help you. I would suggest interviewing several people. Don't be afraid to interview people. They're professionals. You're professional. You're offering your services. I mean, you would gladly sit down and visit with people on your wholesaling. Don't be afraid to say, let's have lunch and talk. Because ideally what you're looking for is a partnership. Ideally you're looking for someone that's going to help you not just on transaction 1, but on transaction 20 down the road. So make sure you find the right person for you. Review and understand contracts. If you're going to be working with someone, ask them for a copy of what their basic contract looks like. Make sure you understand how they like to do contracts, how they like to negotiate, what is their style. And then I would go ahead and look at the paperwork up front. I don't know if you use your own contracts or the state's buy-sell agreements, but make sure you're familiar with that language so you don't just get caught when it happens. And then this one's kind of important. Clearly explain your needs and goals. What are you looking to do? A couple back here, they said they own 8 doors, they live in one. You have needs, you have wants. Why are you investing? Why are you buying that property? Why are you looking for that property? I can just tell right now, they're going to be looking for a property in a couple of years that involves a school district. You know, because they got that little one sitting there. Maybe that's the need you're looking for. I need to be in this school district, or I want to be in this part of town. So make sure you clearly understand what you're looking for in the property. Not just the house itself, but why you want to own that house. Because property can come and go. You saw in our market, you saw the actives. And so you're going to have to make some quick decisions. So this is very important to understand what you're actually looking for. This third step, find the right property. Kind of carrying over what we just talked about. What are your important criteria? Is the most important criteria that it's a 3-2? Is the most important criteria that it has a yard? Does it have a pool? That was the big criteria in 21. Does it have a pool and a home office? Everybody was looking for that in COVID. If you had a pool and a home office, you could sell that for gold. Why do you want to buy that property? What are you looking for? Evaluate your cost. Don't just look at the house. Understand that there are a lot of other costs with that. There's utilities, there's taxes, depending on where you buy the house. Make sure you understand the whole thing, especially as interest rates have creeped up, because everybody comes in thinking, oh, this is my budget, and then I can stretch to get this, and then they forgot about a few things like insurance and utilities and maintenance and the things they're going to be able to make sure you figure it all in. And then I would suggest work backwards. Work back from that to understand what piece of property you can now buy, knowing you're going to have to cover it with these other things. And then we always encourage this, remain open-minded and flexible. Because in this market, with less than 1,000 properties active, you've got to be able to move quickly. Don't fall in love with any one property until you really get it inked, because it could go away quickly. And so remain open-minded and flexible. Step 4, we kind of talk about financing. This is probably one of the most important things if you're going to be in your business long term, but for anybody buying a house, have your lender relationship. Now some of you may be blessed, some of you may be cash buyers at this point, and you're your own lender, congratulations. But most of us are going to go to a banker, we're going to go to a mortgage company. So do that up front. Make sure you understand up front what your credit limit is, what you can do, and what they're going to need, okay? What they're going to need. Perform title search, look at that work. Now, you're going to do a formal title search when you close the property, okay? But even in the buying process, make sure you can often perform a quick early title search and see what the public records say about it. If you have an agent, have your agent just even do a public tax record. Make sure you're dealing with the person that owns that property. Make sure there's not any liens on that property. You don't want to get to closing and find out that you've got a serious problem here with the property you're looking at. And then this one's always important, fully understand the financial terms. Okay? What am I going to be actually financing? Am I doing a 30-year conventional? Am I putting cash down? Am I doing a 15-year? This is a balloon note. You know, I mean, understand the financial terms. And this is where this person here and your agent can really help you. Because now I'm going to get into an area I know absolutely nothing about. But my really smart agents tell me there are people right now that are still buying houses at 7%. And they're not even blinking because they're buying down points. Now, see, I've used the term, I don't know what it means. But y'all do, okay? But the point is, if you put a smart person together here with an agent, they can find. You can assume other people's loans. There's lots of creative ways to do financing that I'm not really the one that's going to instruct you how to do that. But when you start talking to your smart lender and your agent, you'll find the creative package to put it down. There's a phrase I do like from one of my top agents, and she says all the time that you marry the house and you date the rate. And so do not get hung up on the mortgage rate. If you're an investor, don't get freaked out by 7%. You can refinance in a couple years when it comes down. And then and if you're a buyer, the other phrase she uses all the time, and I love it, is always remember, and this is in your benefit if you're an investor, but rent is 100% interest. You know, and so if you're ever worried about it's now the time to buy, rent is 100% interest. So even at 7%, you're still coming out way better on the equity and the long term and the tax benefits. But as an investor, also make sure you understand your financial terms. Step 5, you make the offer. Now we're getting down to the serious part of actually buying a house. Making the offer. But when you make the offer, you're going to be looking at inspecting the property. I, of course, am always going to recommend inspect the property. Some people are into sight unseen and all these crazy things. I don't ever recommend that. I say inspect the property. Or at least make sure, at least make sure you have the right to inspect the property. You may decide later to punt it, but make sure that's in there. Number 2, acquire title insurance, clear title. We kind of talk about that. If you're moving toward a closing and you make an offer, you want to make sure it has clear title. Read and understand the contract. And so many of my members, we joke, and I apologize to the realtors in the room, we joke that realtors don't read, you know, because after a while it's a standard buy-sell contract, right? It's 12 pages. I work with that every day. Really? Did you see what they may have written in the margins? Did you see the comments? Don't ever sign a document you haven't looked at every page, because they may have changed something. There may be something in there that you think that you know and you don't. And so don't ever get tricked, okay? Make sure you always read and understand every document. Place a competitive bid and be prepared to counter, okay? Notice I use the word competitive. I'm not a real fan of the low ball, you know, let me just throw out a $10,000 offer on a clearly $100,000 house. If you gave me that, my seller's response would be no, and please leave us alone. You know, I know license law says I'm going to have to give every one of your offers to my client, but when you come back with $11,000, you're really going to irritate me. And so understand, and we kind of try to teach our realtors, it's about respect. When you're in this business, the other people in the business, they're your competition, but they're also your cohorts. And so you want to respect people. So we always tell people, make a competitive offer, especially in today's market. When you see those charts and you know what the inventory is, there's no playing games, okay? And don't always expect that you're going to get that call back that says, oh, we're in multiple offers, it's highest and best time, okay? Sometimes you might need to lead with highest and best. You got to understand the situation. You might not get back your deal. And I will say this, because a lot of things are going into multiple offers and we're getting in situations, and I say it down here, be prepared to move on quickly. don't be offended if your offer is not accepted. Because I see a lot of these on the backside, all the complaints come to me, and oftentimes sellers are choosing things that you might not have thought about. You may be asking for a 10-day inspection, and they chose an offer that's $5,000 lower than yours because they're closing for cash in 3 days. You know, and you didn't even know that was, I mean, you can't do cash in 3 days, and these other people can. So sometimes don't get so caught up in, oh, I lost the deal, they must have cheated me, okay? Not always the case these days. The sellers sometimes have their own criteria, but make sure you understand the contracts, make your competitive offer. And in today's market, I'd say come out strong with what you think is a good offer. This one's real important, particularly for home buying. When you're gonna mortgage the house, your own investment dollar is not as much. Don't screw up your credit score. Don't get excited that you're about to get the new house and decide to go buy the new boat to put in the backyard, because it's just going to tank your credit score. So when the closer you get to actually getting to a closing, stop shopping. That's kind of the number one rule. Don't go run the credit cards up. Don't go buy a car, okay? I know there's always this myth about even pulling a credit score hurts you. That doesn't hurt you as much as changing your debt. Changing your debt, adding to your debt, your liabilities, is going to really hurt that credit score and could cause that mortgage banker friend to call you back. And that could hurt you a lot right now. And then I've already said be prepared to move on quickly. Don't get caught up in it. If it falls apart, you move on. You start going to number 2. I kind of have a 5A here, a little breakdown with inside to make an offer, negotiations. Remember, in negotiations, you're going to make an initial offer, okay? Be fully expecting a counter offer, okay? If you are new to this game, you always want to make sure the other side got your offer. So if you send somebody an offer, a lot of my members use electronic documents. I don't know if y'all are on electronic documents as well, but my members are normally on an electronic document system. And so you normally have electronic signature that the other side opened it and they're aware of that. If you don't have that, send a text, send a fax, do a call, make sure they got your offer. And then if possible, watch for their counter offers, and we can get back and forth in the counter offers. Eventually, you're going to get to a signed buy-sell agreement or contract, whatever term you like to use. And it needs to be signed by all parties. Make sure that it's effective. Make sure that it's got all the things filled out. And when we get to this point, you get to some interesting things. Due diligence period of repairs. A lot of folks these days, and I know a lot of people in your industry, love the term as is, okay? But this is up to you. When you're typically buying a house, I would never buy a house as is. This is my personal advice. And so I know a lot of people like to sell as is. If you're selling as is, it's off my list. I will never buy anything as is. I'm going to demand at least a 10-day due diligence period to bring my inspectors in. And then we're going to get into an issue of, based on the inspection report, I'm going to probably have a request for repairs. This is not unusual for anybody that's buying and sold property. And so we'll get to the selling side in a second. But I'm going to ask for probably some reasonable repairs based on this. Once we get over this due diligence period, we're going to start the final mortgage application process. And so it's one thing to be pre-approved, we all know that, but now you got to go back to that mortgage banker and say, hey, now we're looking at 123 Main at this price point, and I need to close on this date. And they're going to start to pull everything and get your paperwork together. And then you're also at some point going to very likely need a formal appraisal unless you're buying just for cash and you don't care. But if there's a bank note involved in any way, you're going to be doing a formal appraisal. This one can, right now it's getting a little better, but this could be a problem. The inspection and the appraisal got to a point where when you only have 10 days to do an inspection and there's so much activity going on, over a while, you've probably already figured this out. It helps to have those relationships, to have 2 or 3 inspectors that you have a relationship with and have a couple of appraisers. Remember, you don't always get to pick your appraiser. The bank's going to often pick the appraiser because they don't work for you, they work for the bank. I like to mention a little bit, my appraisers always kill me if I don't say anything about the appraisers. Remember one thing about the appraiser, they could care less about your deal. And that's kind of a joke in the industry. They're not on your side. Their client's the bank. And their job is not even to ask what the property is worth today. Their job is to say, what is the property worth a year from now if you default on it? That's all the bank wants to know. And so, one thing about appraisers, remember that chart I showed you on price appreciation? They don't care about that chart at all. You need to understand that. The fact that the house next door sold yesterday for $250,000 doesn't mean yours is worth $250,000. What is yours going to sell 2 years from now if the market collapses? And so appraisers never give you the appreciation you think the market's going to give you. And so they're always going to lag a little bit. If you've done any housing deals, you know what I'm talking about there. I'm not trying to trash appraisers, but I try to be fair to appraisers. I understand their role in the process, and they are never going to get quite as excited. And remember, what they appraise at doesn't necessarily mean that's what the house is going to sell at. You could still, or your buyer can still pay a premium. If that house is worth 10, if it appraises at $240 and they're charging $250, you could still bring $10,000 to the deal and get that house. That's your risk. The appraiser is just telling the bank it ain't worth $250 today. It might be worth $250 down the road when you sell it 10 years from now. So don't kill your appraiser. They have their job, and they play a role in this process. Step 6. Closing and life after the purchase. Obviously, they have to protect it with insurance. And hopefully, remember we talked about getting costs? Hopefully you checked into costs before you bought it. What's the biggest cost these days? Surprise. What? Insurance. Flood insurance. Flood, if you haven't looked at flood, now you think we're North Louisiana. No, we got areas, South Bossier, Tall Timbers, we got areas that have flooded for years. And the new flood models are really raising flood prices a lot.
And they're random.
And they are kind of random. And nobody controls risk. It's called risk 2.0. And nobody really controls that. So the point is, A, hopefully you checked that back a few slides ago on your cost, but then get the flood insurance. Get the insurance. If you haven't noticed, the weather's kind of mad these days. And so make sure your home is insured. Because going without insurance right now is absolutely crazy between ice storms and wind storms and now fire and heat. Make sure your property's insured. Maintain all your files, keep all your original documents safe, nothing you there. Set up utilities. Generally you want to have arranged and get your utilities set up fairly quickly once you take possession. When you move in, you may need to complete repairs. Sometimes when you go to closing, repairs aren't done if you're the buyer and you've agreed and you've taken cash. And remember, this is a really important step. If you had at your closing that the roof was supposed to be repaired or a new air conditioning unit was supposed to be done, I encourage, please do that. There are some people that don't go and finish those repairs. It just comes back to haunt you long term on that property. Go ahead and complete all the repairs or make improvements. If you're going to make improvements, now's the time. And then go ahead and establish your move-in date. So again, simple steps to the closing. And then the final closing, arrange a final closing date, coordinate with all sides about when you're going to actually do it. Generally involves an attorney, a title attorney, and on how you may close. Generally, before you close, complete a final walkthrough, okay? Generally, before you take possession. I love to tell the story of my first house. I sold my first house on Ontario, and the night before we closed, a storm came through. And it took no damage. We closed. So I went by the house. There was no damage to the house. We closed. The next night, another storm came by, and a limb fell and cleaved a walkway and took out part of a little sunroom. And it wasn't mine, because at midnight it happened. Fortunately, we both had the same insurance company, USAA, so I didn't feel so bad. But the point was, ownership matters. You know, whose insurance covers that, whose insurance. So, generally, before you take possession, you or your agent, go do one final walkthrough, especially if you think things were supposed to be done. Did the electrical box get done? Was there a new roof put on? Did they get the painting done in the kitchen? I obviously have arranged all financings, because you got to get to closing. This becomes real important. Constant communication. Whether it's you doing it yourself or with your agent, stay in constant communication with your people. One thing I will warn you about is with communication, I like in-person communication. I like to remind a lot of people these days that these are telephones. You can talk to a human being. Why do I joke about that? Because so many people get a little text about, hey, I need the wiring instructions. Or they get the email that says, hey, I lost your banking number. Can you send that to me again? There's a lot of fraud going on as you get closer to one of these closing tables. And so I would encourage you not only constant communication, but consider before you click anything or you send any bank information in the last 2 or 3 days, pick up the phone and call the person and say, hey, did you really send me this? Do you really need my routing instructions again? Because once that money's gone, it's just going to screw this deal up and you're going to be hard pressed. So be very careful and be in constant communication. Remember about tax, escrow, and closing costs, because you may get to that table and be surprised as things come out. Especially, we're on the buying side right here. You're bringing all the money. Generally, you're not surprised on the buying side as much, because they told you up front, you're walking in with a check for this amount of money. So you generally know what you're bringing to the table. You may not know where all it's going, but you know how much you're sliding across the table. So, but you be prepared for that and make sure that it does take in place, the escrow amounts. And then I always like to add this part, stay calm, be professional. There's absolutely no reason to ever be at a closing and get in a fight with anybody, to yell at anybody. If you have that moment, just get up and walk out. It's emotional. Remember, if you are the buyer, we are buying here, the house it really can have an emotional value to the seller. And so when you're the buyer at the table, just think about that. I remember when my mom sold that house. She sold a house that she and my dad had lived in for 35 years. And I knew 100% the couple buying the home, they didn't value it the same way Mom did. They were buying it for a whole nother reason, not to raise a family and because of the school district, and they were buying it, quite frankly, to gut and do something with. So they were a little flippant at, about certain things, and it kind of upset my mom. And I kept telling her, you've got to let it go. you're selling it. It's not your house anymore. So when you're the buyer, just be a little respectful that it is the other person's memory that they're getting rid of. Now, if it's investment property, that's often a little different. Those are business deals, but residential housing. Selling a house, a little different when you're on the selling side. Remember, this is 101. I'm trying to get through here, basic. And so I looked at a lot of lists, different recommendations, and I kind of like it's a 10-step process. I saw 9, I saw 10. So a quick 10-step process: determine your timeline, understand cost, again, hire the right professional, prepare your home, complete some pre-listing things, complete your disclosures, and then we get into the heart of it: showings, offers, closing, and close the sale. Let's walk through this real quick. What do I mean by timeline? When you get ready to sell a house, you ought to have an envision in your brain, what's my timeline? Now, we all think I'm going to put it to market and sell it next week. That ain't going to happen, okay? What's your real timeline? Okay, I need to sell this house by December 31st for tax reasons, or I need to get a couple of units ready to go in March because I got what's your real timeline when you're looking to selling your house? When is the best time to sell? You look at those charts I showed you, there's times that are better to sell. Now, you can sell any time of the year. If you're selling at the end of the year, you may have great inventory when nobody else does. But the best time, we all know, is going to be that spring run up into the summertime, but you're also competing against the largest time of the market. Am I selling and buying? Generally, generally we don't think about that, but am I selling, this is real popular right now in Shreveport, am I selling my $300,000 house to buy my $600,000 house now out in this new subdivision south of town? Because that's going to be a dual transaction. I'm going to have to sell one to put the equity in the other one. Now, if y'all are investors, you may be doing flips. You may be getting into some exchange of the properties. You may just be adding to your portfolio or just exchanging for cash. But what is your actual strategy? Are you selling? Or are you selling and buying? What is the market doing? We kind of went over the stats. We give our stats out every month to our members. Some of the statistics I showed you are also available on the Louisiana Realtor website. You can just type in Louisiana Realtors, and there's a public website, and they've got pretty good sales statistics for most of the markets there, so you can kind of judge and see how the market's doing. And then this question, when should I contact an agent? Whether you're going to do it yourself or do I need an agent, when is the right time to do that? Step 1. Step 2, understanding the cost of selling. We talked about the cost of buying. Well, what's the cost of selling? It might cost you to prep your house, okay? Now, you may just be selling a little rent house you want to get rid of and you don't care. You're just going to place it on the market. But if you're selling a significant property, you're going to have some cost to prep your house. Are you going to have any moving expenses? What are my closing costs going to be? I might get them covered. I might have to pay for them. Am I going to have capital gains? This is a big deal depending on how you run your business. Am I going to have any capital gains or any tax impacts to selling that house? Because I need to understand that. Most of you probably have a CPA or an accountant that works with you. So when you get into these decisions here on the selling, make sure you understand these tax impacts. Am I getting rid of my duplex to get a fourplex? Am I doing a like exchange? And that's one of the things we fight for as the National Association every year, to keep that there so you can keep moving up with your properties without having that capital gains tax. Step 3, again, hire the right listing agent. Notice I said listing agent here. Not just, this is a different style of person, but hire the right listing agent. Does the person have relevant selling experience? Okay? Have they sold in your area? Do they know this market? Why is that important? Price. They're going to help you set the price. They're going to understand where the market is on what that value. Some of my members get mad when I say this, but I'm the purist, so I just teach theory. But low dual agency rate. What's dual agency? Dual agency is when an agent does both sides of the deal. It is legal in Louisiana. It's legal in a lot of states. I encourage people, when you're looking for an agent, look for someone that doesn't do a lot of dual agency deals. Why? Because that means they're your advocate. That means that they are fighting for your half of the equation. There's nothing wrong with dual agency. I'm not trying to imply that there's anything wrong or sinister about it, but generally you want someone that works in your best interest. I would never hire an attorney to represent me and the guy suing me. I'd hire an attorney to represent me. And so that's the best example. But dual agency is legal. I'm just saying, if you're looking for somebody that does a lot of deals, someone that knows how to work with a bunch of people in town. Again, contract options and negotiations. Make sure when you are buying, when you are selling a house, when we're on the selling side, I've got an agent that understands how I want to do business. They understand what my price point is when I'm looking to get out of this. They understand how I'm willing to play the game and how are they willing to play the game as my agent to help me. And then what is their reputation? I think this is a huge deal. Am I dealing with someone that is reputable, or am I dealing with someone that doesn't have a good reputation? Step 4, prepare your home for sale. Pretty simple stuff. Declutter and maximize space. Obviously, empty houses are probably way better than cluttered houses, okay? Because an empty house, at least it looks big and people can envision what they want in there. But a staged house is going to be better than an empty house, because a well-staged house gives people vision of what the space could be. But the worst is the cluttered house, because it's just going to be a turn-off and they're not going to be able to imagine anything in that space. But maximize the space of the house. You might consider doing a home inspection before you put it on the market on the selling side. Have at least an understanding up front what you may be getting into. Because if you're selling it to me, I'm going to do my inspection. And I'm going to come back and tell you what I perhaps want in repairs. So it might be a good idea just to at least do a quick inspection up front. And you might want to fix some of those obvious things. Some simple repairs is always worth it. And we always hear about street appeal, street curb. Oftentimes that's simple repairs, just kind of get some things done. Are there any money-making improvements you want to do? Okay? I'm not talking flip stuff here. I'm not talking quickly hide something in the bathroom with carpet. You put carpet down in the bathroom, we're going to have a problem, because my inspector's going to pull it up. Okay? So don't try to hide things. But we're talking about legitimate, wait a second, I could drop $5 grand in the kitchen and get $10,000 in return for it. Sometimes you might find some of those good money-making improvements that you're going to hit. And then a deep clean. It's always worth it to have a deep clean of your house before you start getting to trying to show it. Step 5, some more pre-listing things. We talked about stage your home. I'm a huge believer, depending on how you market, in high-quality photographs and video. Now, when I say high quality, you don't have to go hire some artistic photographer to come in and wait for the perfect sunlight. But you might want to do a little more than your iPhone with a blurry camera, okay? Put a little effort in some nice photographs, or at least take the photographs at a higher resolution. And so, because photos sell, and these days video, you really might be surprised how even a simple person with a simple video can do a walkthrough of a house and post that on a sales and get a lot of hits on that. People love video. I don't ever click on video, but people love video, I'm told. And so I'm not the video guy. And then set the best listing price. Now, notice I said listing price. This is probably not the price that your property is going to sell at, but it's the price that's designed to get activity. It's the price that's designed to get people interested in your house. In today's world, you want to be close to what you think the market is, but you'd really kind of like to have some activity. You'd really like to have 2 or 3 people competing for your house. That's what's going to drive it up to its highest and best price. And again, a professional agent can help you with that. Number 6, disclosure. Again, my people are all licensed, so we deal with disclosure. I would encourage you to be aware of disclosure laws, that when they impact you. This is a big one. I would never intentionally hide anything, okay? If you're asked for disclosures, don't hide things. Answer the questions honestly. You're better off with that than trying to hide. Remember, disclosures are legal. Be aware of your answers. I always say it's better to over-disclose. It's better to tell people what took place with the property. We can always deal with that honestly. And then me personally, and I just kind of give that as advice, I try to avoid the answer unknown and as is. Those are always question marks to me. Now, if I'm buying a house to truly flip, I'm going to gut it, I probably don't care. But if I'm buying it to live in, I'm never touching something that says unknown or as is. And so you're not tricking anybody, so you might as well get up here and deal with the disclosures and tell me honestly what's there, and we can have a better discussion. Showings. When we finally get the property showings, you've got it ready, you've got it priced right, it's clean, it's on the market. Now you're going to open the door, you're going to let people in. Showings demonstrate demand. If no one's coming to see your house, something's wrong. You may have to make an adjustment to your price. So first of all, showings should give you a feel of the demand. Is the phone ringing? Are people coming to the door? I would say be flexible. One of the things that's really hard in today's world is somebody wants to see your house and you say, well, I can show it to you next Thursday between 1:30 and 1:45. You know? No, if you're selling your house, this is where we recommend, of course, having an agent or having someone that works with you. You need to work on their terms in today's world. You need to kind of figure it out. You need to be honest if you have a tenant in the house. Okay? This is becoming a bigger problem as people sell tenant-occupied homes. That, you know, in our world, we won't allow a tenant-occupied home with no showings to go on the multi-list. It's got to be showable. And so if you can't go in the house with a tenant, it doesn't go on the multi-list. We're not saying our people can't sell them. We won't put it on MLS because it's got to be showable. And so have your showing strategy, but I would encourage you to be flexible and try to work with the people that want to come. Never tell someone, no, you can't come buy my product. That's just bad salesmanship. Try to find a way to say, yes, we'll get you there as quickly as we can. Think through, how are you going to do scheduling? If you hire an agent, they're going to probably do it for you. If you're doing it yourself, how are you scheduling? How are you doing a key box or a combo? How is someone getting into your house? Do you want someone to get in with your house? When you hire an agent, someone that's bonded is walking them around your house. If you're just, and people do this, and there are business models that do this, and I don't understand it. I would never put a combo on my house and just tell someone, go buy, here's the combination, go buy and see the house. Just buyer beware in that situation. But have your strategy of how you're going to handle that. Obviously, don't ever leave valuables out. This even includes if you're letting my people come in, because I don't want them at risk. Don't leave your valuables out. Never anything with guns or drugs or those types of things. In that regard. And then open houses. Are you going to have open houses? Open houses are making a comeback. Typically they're held on Saturdays and Sundays. You put out a sign, people come by 2 to 4. It's a great way just to open your house up and let people come through and see what's going on. We move a little farther and hopefully we get to an offer. We're going to review and we're going to accept the offer. Well, now we're getting into that buyer pre-approval or proof of funds. I would never accept an offer from someone that doesn't have a pre-approval letter or proof of funds. So most of you probably know this, but what is proof of funds? You may be the most honest person in the world, and you may be a cash buyer, but unless I have a certified letter from your bank, you ain't worth a dime to me. You know, there's no, I got money coming from grandma in the bank. That's what proof of funds is. Even if you claim to be a cash buyer, I got to see your proof of funds. And a lot of people get squirrely about that. When you start asking them to prove they have cash, I would encourage you, prove them that they have cash. Otherwise, they may just be wasting your time. Are you going to have a deposit, an escrow involved? You know, depending on your situation. Is there any kind of deposit? Deposit money can be good because deposit money, once put down, at a certain point, links them to the deal. Maybe they can walk away after so many days after inspection, but after they get through that disclosure, that discovery phase, that deposit money is something they're going to end up forfeiting. Are there contingencies in the deal? Can they walk away from the contract? Sometimes they get a 10-day window to do inspection. Sometimes within that 10-day window, they can declare an out, a due diligence period. And here we're normally talking about loanability, appraisal, and inspection. Make sure you understand your contract doesn't give them an out for any of those things. And then the biggest contingency, and we're going to start seeing a lot more of these, is their buying of your property contingent on them selling another property? And if that is the case, you need to make sure you have language in your contract that if you get another offer, that contract can be kicked out. Does everybody understand how that works? You've probably done that before. That's going to be a growing concern as the market starts to top out with interest rates. Step 9, and we're almost done. Then you start the closing process, which means you're formally getting into the appraisal, the inspection, and then ultimately they're releasing themselves from those contingencies. They are locking themselves into that contract and headed to closing. And then the close of the sale, again, from the buyer side, you're going to the buyer final walkthrough. They're going to have access to the property one last time. You're going to sign the documents. You're going to prepare everything for closing. You're going to make the sale official, record deed. And we always encourage people to record deed. Louisiana is not a disclosure state. You are not required to put the deed at the courthouse, but we encourage you to do that. Make it legal. And then if there is a sale of the other property, make sure that you are aware of that sale of the other property. And that's really all I had. And I'll answer any questions, but hopefully that's kind of what you were looking for.
Jackie has a question.
Sorry, I got one about the rental registrations and the short-term rental. Like when we do our short-term rental registrations, does that go to the other registration or no?
There are two different things.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Correctly. All rental property needs to be registered.
Okay.
That's first. So if you are renting property at all, that's apartments, that's yearly houses.
Right.
Any rental property needs to be registered, does have the registered agent.
Okay.
Now the second, the short-term rental, the STR, short-term rental defined as less than 30 days. Because we did hold that line with Shreveport. Because we pointed out to them if it's 30 days or more, that's state law. They can't touch that. That's the law. That's a lease. And so short-term rental is less than 30 days. If you're in that situation, you have to have your STR permitted. That's a separate deal.
Right.
So you're registered for a rental, but you got to have the Airbnb short-term permit.
Gotcha.
And on that one, if I remember correctly, and help me here, Tommy, I think what we kind of agreed to on that one is if you had an existing, because there were several hundred short-term rentals, and this is just Shreveport. Bossier's leaving us alone for now. But if you had an existing STR, you were kind of grandfathered in as long as you went and got the permit. And where they're headed now, my understanding is, the law basically says, their ordinance says that they can't have too many in a certain period, like they have to be so far apart. What they're trying to prevent is a whole street being taken over by short-term rentals. So owner-occupants in the middle of the street surrounded by all these short-term rentals.
Yeah.
So the law says that an STR has to be so many feet from another one, but the MPC director can waive that requirement. And so that's why all the ones who are kind of here are grandfathered in. They're going to let those come in. And then as new ones come in, if one place is being overwhelmed, the ordinance is going to prevent that, but you can appeal and make an argument that this fits the need. Is that your memory of that one?
It is.
Gotcha.
Good question. Anything else? Well, thank you all for having me out. Always good to come. Mr. Loris, thank you for inviting me.